It's quite challenging for me to come to terms with everything that has unfolded recently, and I suppose I'm in search of an external viewpoint to help make sense of the situation. I was deeply involved in a committed relationship with my former partner for just over a year. We shared a home, built dreams of a future intertwined with each other, and I genuinely convinced myself that the foundation of our bond was unshakable. However, a couple of months back, I stumbled upon the heart-wrenching truth: he had been unfaithful, engaging in an affair with another girl, who, to make the entire situation even more infuriating, happened to be the girlfriend of one of his close friends. The months of December had turned into a whirlwind of confusion and despair. For around 3 weeks, he would vanish to a nearby cafe, often staying there until the sun began to rise. Initially, I thought he was grappling with something personal, as he continued to display affection towards me and consistently mentioned that he was either alone or out with friends on those late nights. Yet, one evening, fatigue from my ceaseless worries led me to take action. I was done with the unanswered questions and the gnawing uncertainties that plagued my mind. So I resolved to visit the cafe where he had been spending his nights. As I stepped through the door, the sight before me struck like a lightning bolt. There he was, sitting across the table from her, engaged in conversation that appeared far too intimate for comfort. I felt my heart pound in my chest as I marched over to confront them. Their expressions were palpable, they seemed flustered and guilty, like two deer caught in the headlights. He quickly ushered me outside, away from the prying eyes of strangers and muffled conversations buzzing inside the cafe. That's when he uttered the words that felt like a dagger to my heart. "I'm not feeling it anymore," he said bluntly, his voice void of the warmth it used to carry. "The spark is gone." I was left in a state of utter disbelief. Yes, we had encountered our share of issues, but we had always managed to find our way back to one another. I couldn't comprehend what he was saying, it felt like a surreal nightmare from which I desperately wanted to awaken. However, something deep inside me, the gnawing sensation that had been growing steadily for weeks, understood the reality I was being thrust into. I felt betrayed, yet a part of me also understood the power of instinct. Haunted by the revelation of his betrayal, I felt a surge of anger coursing through my veins, pushing me to take one more step. I contacted her boyfriend, relaying everything I had witnessed. "Don't worry," he responded with an air of disbelief. "She wouldn't do something like that to me." His words rang hollow, a feeble attempt to keep his own world from crumbling around him. The complexity of emotions swirled within me like a turbulent storm. Anguish, betrayal, and confusion grappling for dominance in my heart. It was a surreal moment when not only my relationship was in tatters, but I was also forced to confront the broader implications of loss within my circle of friends. The facade we had all built around our connections began to feel like a brittle shell, with cracks spreading outward from the moment I confronted the truth. The days that followed were an agonizing equation of loneliness and reflection. I sat in our apartment, the shared space that once felt so warm and inviting, now transformed into a cold reminder of what was lost, and replayed memories in my mind. I recalled the moments of laughter shared over dinner, the endless conversations that stretched into the night, and the dreams we had woven together in blissful ignorance. Each memory resonated like a haunting echo, amplifying the pain I felt. Friendships evolved during this time as well. Some friends rallied around me, offering their support and wisdom, eager to help me move forward from the shroud of heartbreak engulfing my life. Others seemed distant, caught in the awkward chasm that betrayal often creates, unsure of which side to choose. I found solace in those who stood firmly by my side, their presence a balm to my raw wounds. On particularly tough days, I would wander the city streets, letting my thoughts drift to the moments I had shared with him. The laughter, the sweetness, and even the mundane routines suddenly took on a bittersweet tint. I reveled in the desire to reclaim my life, to rediscover my own identity outside the confines of our relationship. I sought refuge in books and music, allowing art to fill the void that had been left behind. As time went on, I began to navigate the complex landscape of healing. I started questioning not just the why of his actions but also the who I had become in the process. My heart had been shattered, but I refused to allow it to define my future. With every passing day, the pain lessened a touch, and the idea of reinvention began to take shape. In quiet moments of introspection, I realized that while the betrayal had been unbearable, it also provided an unexpected opportunity for growth, a chance to find strength in vulnerability and assert my worth in ways I had never considered. I looked forward and decided to embrace every facet of myself that I had neglected during the haze of our relationship. With newfound determination, I vowed to prioritize my happiness and well-being, searching for the spark within myself that had dimmed during that tumultuous year. As the season turned and life continued to unfold, I slowly pulled together the fragments of my shattered heart, dreaming of a future where I could forge meaningful connections devoid of deception or doubt. "He wouldn't dare to treat you like that," a voice in my head insisted, but deep inside, I understood the truth all too well. Despite the gnawing doubt, I clutched onto the thread of hope, my heart unwilling to give in to despair just yet. I asked him earnestly if we were still planning on visiting his family together for the holidays. With a nonchalant nod, he replied affirmatively, but I could sense a veil of reluctance hanging in the air. I took a deep breath, convincing myself that maybe this trip would be the turning point for us. Perhaps it was just what we needed, the two of us, away from the distractions of everyday life, to rekindle the spark that once brought us together. It was a naive thought, but in that moment, it felt like my last chance to save what remained of our relationship. As we embarked on the road trip, however, the reality was anything but what I had pictured. He kept his phone tucked away, almost as if it was a forbidden object. Conversation was sparse, reduced to awkward silences that echoed between us. I felt him slipping through my fingers like sand as we drove. With every mile that passed, the distance between us seemed to grow, leaving an emptiness that was palpable. When we finally arrived at his family's home, the situation only worsened. I found myself mingling with relatives while he chose to retreat into the sanctuary of the bathroom for what felt like an eternity, his fingers dancing across the screen of his phone in secrecy. And when he did emerge, he often found excuses to drive off alone, leaving me with a growing sense of unease. I tried to brush it off, dismissing my fears as mere paranoia. But deep down, I knew the truth was lurking like a shadow, dark and unavoidable. Then came a fateful night, one filled with restless sleep and uncertainty. As he drifted into slumber beside me, I wrestled with the overwhelming urge to uncover the truth. Curiosity clawed at me, and despite the trepidation that knotted in my stomach, I reached beneath his pillow, my heart racing. It felt like a lifetime before I finally found his phone. With trembling fingers, I unlocked it and began to scroll through his messages. What I discovered shattered the fragile remains of my hope into a million jagged pieces. There, laid bare before me, was everything I had dreaded. He had spent the night with her, the very night before we embarked on this journey. The messages were explicit, filled with longing words and recollections of their time together, charming moments he had shared with me now tainted with betrayal. He had texted her constantly throughout our trip, pouring out his heart in ways he hadn't done for me in what felt like ages. Each "I'm thinking about you" echoed like a painful reminder of the love that had slipped through our fingers, leaving me gasping for breath. As I read those words, emotions swirled inside me like a tempest, anger, sadness, disbelief, all tangled together in a chaotic dance. Tears prickled at the corners of my eyes as I closed my gaze on the phone and took a moment to collect my thoughts. The weight of his betrayal settled heavily upon my chest, pushing the air from my lungs. How could he do this? How could he pretend as if everything was fine while leaving me to play the fool? I felt an overwhelming wave of resentment wash over me, and with it, a determination began to rise within me. I couldn't let this continue. I deserved more than secretive texts and hollow conversations. I needed to confront him, to demand answers, to reclaim my dignity. Gathering my resolve, I placed the phone back under the pillow and steeled myself for the storm that was about to unleash between us. That morning, as daylight spilled through the curtains, I knew that everything would change. The illusion of blissful ignorance was shattered, the fragile facade crumbled, and I was ready to confront the reality of our relationship head-on. I would no longer live in the shadows of his deceit. I would communicate my hurt, demand clarity, and assert my worth. Whatever the outcome, I was determined to take control of my own narrative, even if it meant facing the fear of losing him entirely. And so, I prepared myself for the confrontation, my heart pounding like a distant drum. I would no longer be paralyzed by fear or insecurity. Today would be the day I reclaimed my voice, no matter the consequences. Laughter filled the air as they exchanged cherished inside jokes, a scene that used to ignite warmth in my heart, now transformed into a leech sucking out my will to breathe. I felt an overwhelming wave of nausea wash over me. Gathering my thoughts, I decided to confide in her boyfriend, my ex. Surprisingly, this time he actually believed me. With determination etched on his face, he took matters into his own hands, scrutinizing her phone. What he discovered shattered whatever little shreds of trust remained. For weeks, I had been grappling with the bitter truth of his betrayal, trying to understand the best way to confront him. When the moment finally arrived, I revealed everything I knew, casting off the shroud of silence I'd draped over my feelings. His defense was textbook. With a dismissive wave, he replied, "Technically, we were broken up before anything romantic happened. We didn't even kiss, just talked and flirted." As the words tumbled from his mouth, the world around me blurred, and I later learned the gut-wrenching truth: he had been seeing her long before he officially ended things with me. It felt as if the ground below me had opened up, leaving me teetering on the edge of despair. The situation intensified, driven by the claustrophobic reality of living together in a minuscule studio apartment. Financial restraints had tethered me to the space, and amidst the emotional chaos, I had been desperately saving up for a new lease, one that remained tantalizingly out of reach. The silence that enveloped the apartment was thick and suffocating, pierced only by the flimsy excuses for conversation, like when he'd callously inquire, "When are you moving out?" It would be nice to have her over freely. Meanwhile, while each night crept on, he gallivanted around town with her, sharing laughter and affection in ways that felt like a betrayal of everything we had once built together. He took her on lavish dates, spent long, vibrant nights in her presence, capturing those moments in photos reminiscent of those he once took with me. Each image I stumbled upon felt like a dagger to my heart. I had made the ghastly error of peeking into his phone again, revealing a thread of messages where they declared they needed each other. The romantic sentiment flickered through the screen, illuminating the stark contrast between my sparkling past and my desolate present. Their snapshots captured carefree outings, her trimming his hair, them laughing at a quaint cafe, or simply lounging at the park, echoes of love that used to reverberate between us, now drowned out entirely. The girl he had shacked up with had been cast out by her previous boyfriend and was already dabbling in new romances. Yet here I sat, still mired in emotional turmoil, feeling like I was the only one stuck in time, while everyone else around me had decisively moved on. It was a bitter pill to swallow, compounded by good days that played tricks on my mind, making me question the very essence of love and loyalty. In the quiet solitude of my room, I often wondered, do relationships that spring forth from betrayal ever stand the test of time? Have others experienced a similar heartbreak, only to find their exes resurfacing with hollow apologies or an empty promise of reconciliation? I couldn't shake the images of him and her drifting through my mind. Did he feel any flicker of remorse, or had he fully embraced this new chapter of his life, flinging me into the dustbin of his past? It stung painfully to think that to him, I might have been merely disposable, a transient phase. It seemed as if the world around me was a carousel, spinning endlessly while I remained suspended in this cruel dimension of sadness. Why did it feel as if everyone had advanced, except for me? Was I so mired in the wreckage of a previous love that I couldn't perceive a way forward? A well of questions bubbled up inside me, each drawing a deeper line in my heart. If any of you have walked down this tortured road, I'm desperate to hear your tales. Did your ex ever come to regret their choices? Did their new relationship flourish, or did it crumble under the weight of guilt? How did you ultimately discover the strength to turn the page and forge ahead with your life? Deep down, I know there's a glimmer of hope on the horizon, a new beginning waiting just around the corner, and yet, as I linger in this moment, it's hard to recognize. Each dawn feels like a battle, but the thought of fresh opportunities fuels my resilience. I'm just navigating through the murky waters of heartache, clinging to the belief that eventually, I will rise, stronger and more resolute than before. Any insights, experiences, or words of wisdom would mean the world to me as I endeavor to reclaim my life from the clutches of despair. If my story resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe for more. I'd love to hear your advice on the steps I should take. Keep in touch for future stories.